All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had good discussions in your room. I think we have everybody who's still here for this meeting back from the rooms. So we would like to hear kind of the highlights of what you all discussed in the different rooms, so we can go around and maybe just go room by room to get the highlights for each of these questions. We can do it by question. So,
Hello.
oh,
Hey, Nat. I have a question. I was in the Victor, from Unitary, we were at the Victor breakout session.
mhm.
There was a Google Doc document with 7 questions. So
Oh,
we, as a group at Unitary, we respond to these questions, but
mhm.
we cannot do anything with the Google the
Right.
document. So we copy and paste it on a Word document. So
Okay,
how can
great.
we share our answers?
If you can just send us one of the organizers your notes, and then after the meeting, we'll compile all the documents that you all send us. Okay, so that's true for all the groups. If you couldn't edit the Google Doc, and I know there's a problem, then just write it on your own Google Doc or a Word document and just send it to one of us.
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. So if folks can maybe share some ideas of what kind of science questions they think that a facility or an infrastructure that is joined by the community can help them answer.
Are you going to call in individual groups or you just want people to talk?
Yeah, let's just do room. There was no room 1, so room 2. Sometimes people don't know what room they're in.
Cassandra is still there. I think she collected our discussion.
So for group 2, for this first question, it was a pretty broad question. So we talked more about thematic issues.
Yes.
So essentially, Victor could help solve some of the networks for collaboration and community, have lists of modeling resources, and help some of the more mechanical questions behind modeling. So, but overall, it was a pretty broad question that we had a difficult time answering.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Room 3.
So we had a couple people say that they thought there would be some value in having Victor. So if there are online codes, of course, you could use the codes to explore your own specific problems, like near source pyroclastic fallout. Or to use, if there were multiple codes on Victor, you could compare different codes and find out, for example, whether, if you're looking at a 3D Tephra model like Ash3D, comparing it with Tephra 2, you may find out that for your application, if you're looking at short, small eruptions, that Tephra 2 runs a lot faster than Ash3D. So maybe, that's the one for you. One other person mentioned it was a good place to try to standardize documentation. If different documents describing models describe them in different ways, it would be harder to compare them than if there was a standardized way of doing it.
All right. Room 4.
Yeah, so in our group, we talked about a couple different things. One is accessibility to sort of cutting edge computation, like GPU computing and machine learning and that sort of thing. So how do we engage the community in those sorts of more cutting edge style computational methods? It was mentioned that it might be a kind of similar to the documentation and similar to what the surface dynamic community was talking about in terms of formalism for how to pass information from one code to another. Might be a good outcome to help science. And then some people have raised the issue of like specific models, like the community doesn't have a there's not a widely used surge model, for example. And so could there be a way that groups could be defined that might work on those kinds of codes that the community needs? So those were some of the things that we talked about. It was also mentioned, maybe not for this question, but that VHub kind of emphasized a lot of hazard codes, I think just because of the people involved, in the proposal and stuff. And there was a question about, well, can the community go also toward codes related to things like seismic analysis and interpretation and deformation, community deformation codes and that sort of thing that might be more related to actual, monitoring and assessing what's going on in a more real-time sort of scenario.
All right, thanks. 5.
So we touched upon a lot of the same themes that the other groups did, but we also wanted to focus on the workflow, like how you can thread these different codes into one another. A great example would be like integrating an Ashfall code into perhaps a Lahar code. So instead of having to compute the area, you can use your output from the Ashflow code and say, this is the catchment or basin that I want to source my Lahar from, that kind of stuff. And so making some continuity in that workflow. And then a lot of the same stuff that other people had mentioned, in the same way that the land lab kind of works together in a modular sense.
6.
So most of the other groups already covered what we came up with, but one thought was that having some more guidance or better guidance on what models are applicable for what particular process or problem and what are the different limitations. And so developing essentially like ultimately be a table or chart of what models can be run when, how can you best use them, and all of that would ultimately require better documentation or more systematic documentation of all the different types of model.
Mm-hmm. There was no room 7, correct? Was there? Okay. So we already touched upon some of the desired capabilities, things that you have now and you want to keep, or things that you want to see developed as part of this new initiative. So if you want to go around and tell us kind of what you would like to see happen. I can start from 6 and go back. From 6.
Well, I have to find my thoughts then. You said this is more of like what direction we'd like to see Victor go in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or
Okay.
like capabilities that you want to see, or platforms, or just your vision.
So one thing is the ability to share data, so especially very large data sets, and this would probably then necessitate cloud computing. Also having high performance computing and training for people to use high performance computing, because folks that are no longer at a university might not have access to those types of classes and learning opportunities. And then one other one is, let's see, one thing that's great with VHub that would be good to keep here would be having different online, various models that can be run online and used by students or by observatories in other countries that might not have heavy-duty computing resources of their own. That's a really important broader impact for hazards and education.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. 5. You muted.
We also agreed with a lot of those points. Another thing that some of us found really helpful was the workspace for folks who don't run Linux. Like that was highlighted in our group as something that was absolutely super important. And so certainly I would go ahead and keep that. And I was a student who used a lot of these tools during my graduate studies. And that was kind of my gateway drug into this. And so that was certainly very helpful. And we talked about also how some of the tools that don't really get maintained as well. That's also really helpful, instead of trying to, figure out how to work a decade old or a half a decade old code. that is no longer run on modern infrastructure in this case, like, you know, certain packages aren't updated. That is like absolutely a game changer. So all of those things were super important from our perspective about the things we saw from VHub that were really helpful.
Mhm. Right, 4.
Oh, is that me? Sorry. Yeah, so group 4 talked about all those things. We also, it was mentioned that some people use VHub mostly for classes, and it was mentioned there was strong support for Titan 2D on VHub as being a really nice model. And I just point out that, you know, the U Buffalo group and Bonnie put in huge hours in making that work as a code. In terms of desired capabilities, people talked about linking the physics-based models more clearly to computational resources. Like a community effort for developing a surge model would be an example of that. And then there was nice emphasis from Aaron and Nick on the need to increase cultural awareness on any cyber infrastructure, and like that could include sort of languages other than English to actually include that kind of documentation, to the point where maybe there should be a budget item related to developing that sort of capability, so that Spanish speakers, for example, have better access to the models. That's it.
Great. 3.
So without trying to repeat what a lot of people have said, some of the things that we brought up were the ability to, so things that that people liked with current VHub included being able to look at different codes and see what they did. The group features like identifying work groups, wikis, blogs, capability to either download code or use it online, and using VHub to be able to post small databases. In terms of desired features beyond what's capable currently on VHub, one person, well, it wasn't clear to me whether the current VHub allows for version control like GitHub does, but I thought that would be very useful if it doesn't already exist. One person mentioned the resurrection of PubVault, perhaps. One thing everybody pretty much agreed on was that we need somebody to support, like a software engineer who can guide people in how to develop community codes, and utilities that would make coding on a community platform like this easier and more productive for them than just trying to code on their own platform. We want to, give people an incentive to develop community code rather than just doing it because they feel some sort of community obligation to do it.
Great. 2.
So we talked about a lot of the things that have already been discussed, but a couple of the key points from our discussion on these were the DOI generation for codes and data sets. That was a really big positive, as well as integrating with GitHub is something we'd like to see in the future. And then the two biggest things that we talked about on these two categories was the ability to run models through the web interface, since that's really the main way to gain code familiarity and learn about code. And then along with that, we thought it'd be really beneficial if every code or model on Victor had a standardized type tutorial. So whether that's a YouTube video walking you through it, a lesson plan, a code cookbook, some standardized tutorial for each model.
Excellent. Great. Yeah, I love that there's a lot of overlap between what the groups are discussing. So there's seem to be some sort of common threads and agreements on a lot of points. But, and the last points were kind of about how people think facility or an infrastructure like that should be governed, who gets to decide all these things, and also what the relationship should be with, say, international collaborators and other agencies, observatories, the USGS, etc. So just let's just open the floor to anyone who has any comments on this. One of the scribes or one of the participants. You can just unmute yourself if you want to say something.
I'll kick it off. Our group talked a lot about the need for more education in HPC and that sort of thing. And we even talked about how different universities are starting to offer C and HPC for geoscientists, and maybe there's enough commonality in the community that that should be at least shared resources, or maybe even co-taught classes and that sort of thing. And that could be helped by this sort of infrastructure development. So that was one thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that our group talked about was that whatever comes out needs to be something that has continuity and a commitment and buy-in from the community, and something like a minimum of a 5-year commitment, but ideally something longer, and a process where it doesn't need to keep recompeting and reinventing itself on a 3 to 5 year grant cycle. And the other part is that this should be, again, a group project and not led by a single PI or a team of 3 or 4 people, but it really needs to be very broad-based so that it then has a chance of getting significant community buy-in and longevity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that our group talked about was making sure that there's buy-in from, for example, IAVC to help with that kind of continuity and having it be long-term. But overall, a lot of it's going to depend on what that long-term funding source is past the initial 5 or 10-year NSF grant, whatever this is going for, is whatever that long-term goal for funding is, should be involved from the get-go.
So another thing that got mentioned in our group was trying to develop models that actually respond to real-time information and data assimilation. So that's in terms of making these codes more useful for USGS and international observatories and stuff like that. And then the other thing that I thought was really cool that somebody mentioned in our group was that if we could fit better with efforts like Converse and MCS, for example, have focus groups that work on specific problems, specific coding issues that the community needs. So in other words, trying to just develop this more of a collaborative atmosphere to code development to meet specific issues that arise at specific moments. I thought that was a really nice idea.
Excellent. Yeah, so I guess now is a good time for just completely opening if anybody wants to say anything about how they might use a facility like that, if they think it should be international, if it should be focusing on, we heard about how VHub was focusing more on hazards, should it move deeper? Maybe folks involved with the other initiatives say what they think could be a good link between a facility like that with Converse, with MCS, or in general, all the things that were raised during today's meeting. And I realize it is one of the pretty long workshop and long meetings, so it's maybe people are already fried.
One thing I got out of today that was really important was trying to scope out the relationship between VHub/Victor and these other initiatives that Mark and Greg Tucker and others talked about. And I don't know, it kind of convinced me that it's super important that we develop those links better, but also that a lot of the coding problems we have are obviously volcano specific. So you know, maybe there's a role for making those links, especially around topics like education and HPC training and that sort of thing. And you know, the focus group on code development and that sort of thing is coming from Converse type people, and you know, that are our communities. So it's an interesting dynamic, I think, especially with these large initiatives coming off, where it fits in exactly.
I wonder if the kind of students and postdocs who are still here have any thoughts about, you know, as the next generation of the people coming to use these things, what would you like to see more or different than what is there now?
Yeah, I can talk as a postdoc.
Mhm.
And something we talk in our group was having more cards, maybe, because for each domain we only have few cards, and maybe it could be good if we have more cards. And I talk about benchmarking, especially because we only have, for example, Titan 2D for PDCs, and it will be very great for the benchmark to have like not every code, but most of the codes on Victor, because it will be great for people to use them. And also it could be the repository for the results and everything. Everybody can consult and watch the simulations, the outputs, even the inputs. So for my point of view, in the future, I would like to see even more codes, even more collaboration about this part, because I think it's the best way in the future to collaborate. It's like having a platform like that to share everything and enable everybody that wants actually to use it. That's what I can have.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of that as well, and say that I think that some of the biggest one of the biggest things this new tool can have, I think, would be just tools for active collaboration in real time code development tools, and then like standardization of documentation for these codes to make the bar to entry for using a given tool like much lower if everything is consolidated in one place, so that you can select from possibly several models, pick which one's best for your application on a fairly rapid basis.
Yeah, I think David have a very good point on standardization of data, standardization of I don't know, model input or everything. I think it's very important. I think Mattia also thought about it in our group about like having a tutorial to build and integrated the models in Victor the same way. I think it's very important for the next, having something that is standardized, because it's way better for Hazard after to use some sort of structure for the next.
So one of the issues that I found, I am currently a postdoc at Cambridge, and I was brought onto mostly a social science project as like their modeler. And so I came from a LavaFlow background, but now I found myself modeling PDCs and LaHARS. And so for me, a lot of the buy-in cost is figuring out how to navigate the inputs for a lot of these models. And so I think instead of just having like one example, if we could save our input parameters as part of like a broader collaborative, repository, I guess, I think that would help the buy-in cost of having to kind of switch between what you did during your postdoc or your graduate or your your PhD or graduate studies, because a lot of us are having to kind of switch our focus a little bit as we move forward. And that would definitely reduce a lot of the buy-in costs. Like I lost 2 months of my life into trying to model some Lahars with Titan 2D just because like that's not as well supported. And I was interested in it, but then I talked to somebody like, oh yeah, we don't ever use that. Like, well, nobody wrote that anywhere. Sucks to suck in my case, I guess.
All good points. And there's a question in the chat about how to deal with reproducibility. You know, somebody wrote a paper, somebody comes in 5 years later, maybe the code's available, maybe not, but then how do you reproduce the results, the plots that are in that paper? How do you make sure it is what it is? I don't have an answer, but it's a very
I
there are
tried
things
and you
we-
don't.
I think there are things we can learn from other communities. For example, the global climate modeling community, they have some protocols where they actually, for every run, store the executable and the input file.
Mhm.
So it's not, yeah. So in principle, somebody could pick that up, at least have the same exact
Yeah.
input file.
I think that's critical. Or at least if it's version controlled, the version that they use to run the model.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a tool or capability that maybe we should consider, you know, coming into a new design and a new infrastructure. Yeah, good point. All right, so we're 5 minutes before the official end time, so I think it's a good time to really thank all the speakers and the organizers and everyone who attended. It's really, really interesting to see, you know, people can sit and write a proposal to the end of day, and then it's all in our head, you know, unless we actually ask what people want. That's the part that would make it really useful. So really thanks everybody for providing the input and all the guest speakers for sharing insights from other places and other efforts as well. We'll be happy to answer any questions offline by email, you know where to find us. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
organizing that.
Thank you.
Hi to all. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks.
Bye, Antonio. Thanks for participating.
Hi all. Thank you for invitation.
Awesome. Armando Ceballos, thanks for participating.
Hey, you're welcome, Sean. It's nice. Take care, and we'll send the document with our answers to the questions.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, do it. That's awesome.
Welcome. Bye, Ainat.
Bye.
All right.
Okay. I think we're basically done.
Yep.
I think we got a fair amount of input.
Yeah, there was a lot of information there. Decent number of participants, at least in the first half.
No, I think
We reached 60 at some point.
60.
Yeah, we were almost 60, and then when we went to the breakout, we came out, it was 35. So.
Yeah, a lot of people were telling, you know, they're going to be there for the first half. Breakouts are tough to retain people.
But the people really had things to say.
Yeah, no, I popped into all the rooms and there was discussions going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's in the notes. I already got most of them by email.
Good. Yeah, if you can file them, we should take a look. And what's the deadline now?
March 2nd for the proposal.
That's what I talked about.
I guess one question that I've been kind of thinking about a lot, kind of in my own head, is, with all these other efforts going on, mostly the MCS collaboratory, just kind of building through the spring with all those webinars and working groups, is now the right time to submit this, or should we wait a year till those needs are kind of clarified and then we have just a bigger buy-in?
My view is it doesn't cost us that much to resubmit now. And I think we have a good chance, since we had this workshop and we're tuned into the community. And I personally don't think it's that clear that MCS is going to get its act together. I mean, it's broad and encompassing, right? I mean, they want to do everything. Thorsten said, though, that they kind of end at the Earth's surface.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have a problem, overlapping with them too much.
Yeah.
I think we ought to try to forge links with these other organizations, because especially on training, there's a lot of overlap on training, and that became clear today, that people are missing the training aspect of it. So I feel like we got to hit that harder, but I think we got to get collaboration with these other groups on the training. I think we shouldn't try to train on our own and reinvent the wheel, but we can work with them to do.
Are you talking about the classroom use kind of stuff, or what do you mean by training? Training's kind of many things.
I felt like there was a need for training on the kind of basic skills, like how do you use a cloud? How do you use, a server? I mean, it's best learned while doing, so it's a little tricky, but I think it's best learned if people use our tools, tools that they are likely to use for their own work, rather than say, okay, make a hello world application, and then they forget everything. So
yeah, that was already a key for VHub. I mean, we could see it right away that when we did all these workshops and training, hands-on sessions, a lot of people were actually using VHub, and when we stopped, then it was really a
New
drop.
generation is not getting trained. New generation is never buying in. That's what's happened now. You and Jose and so on were doing those workshops that every time you did one of those, you got 25 new people.
Yeah, it was very, very interesting. In one of the webinars or working groups for the MCS, it came up, and then somebody said, oh, well, my university has, HPC training and Python training, and, that's just what we do. So it's like, okay, but maybe your university is the bestest ever, but not everybody is at your university. So, how do you deal with that?
So it came up in, well, Toby brought it up, that in our group, that we had this, I think, Abani, of the four of us, you were the only one not there, but we had this tabletop exercise on Mount Hood eruption with the USGS, and a bunch of people participated. I think 60 people participated in that. And what was cool about that was that a lot of people were exposed to a lot of different things. And a lot of people stayed kind of engaged and excited. We could say that our group can specifically do training on code use and cloud use and that sort of thing in the context of a tabletop exercise. So people are excited about, the eruption of Colima or something, and they have a real-time need to run a lava flow simulation or run Titan 2D, then they'll engage and do it. And so maybe we can think creatively about, sort of the general training in that way.
So that's sort of, well, so there's three sort of scenarios, right? Number one scenario is what he brought up, the operational use by people that are less than sophisticated computational scientists or data scientists.
Yeah.
The second is the research use, where you're trying to do things that are not really easily definable. That's where the comment that Mark made, how do you promote things like reproducibility? How do you promote things like easy validation and so forth? That becomes at sort of the pure cutting edge researcher kind of use. The third one is the student use. So we got to figure out all three stakeholder type people
Right.
of these things and how to do that.
Right.
I think we've kind of focused a little bit on one, and three's kind of happened on the side.
Yeah.
They focused on the researcher and they have gone ahead and used it in their classes. We really haven't talked about the operational users or the
Right. Well, it's kind of driven by funding, right? I mean, if NSF wants it to be a research code and a research facility, then you kind of push that point. Even if in reality, maybe most of your users are observatories and they just need the answer.
I think with VHub, at least a lot of the use was observatories outside the US. I mean,
Right, which is a tough sell to NSF, I think.
I think it was, I don't know how you'd say that. This is national resource, but you're supporting an international community. So
Yeah, yeah. Always going to be tricky, but
the right thing to do. So
I think the student training is really important too. It's, you're giving them the tools. I had the benefits of having backgrounds in software and doing a CS degree, but most people don't. And I have students now who come in with a geology degree. They know not even what a command line is.
Right.
It's tough, right? So, but then they're very, very interested in volcanoes and they want to learn and they're capable of learning all of that. So having them, kind of learn through, an available facility like that, either through, an example exercise like you did, or like you suggested, Chuck, or something that's more basic. I mean, sure. I mean, yeah, here again, Columbia, they offer the resources. They can go and take an HPC training or Python training and all that. But it will mean a lot more if it is part of, like, if they need to learn Python because this code on VHub is in Python and they want to change it or something, or want to use it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I think we got a good, the only other thing I remember from our group, there were a couple of people that were very strong about, but what about data? How are you going to connect to the data? So there's...
the data is there. I think putting a good interface, putting a good interface is important. Now there's...
How do you get
right.
Exactly. To put data, observation data, whatever the hell it is, building in the right APIs to the public repositories, Earthcube or whatever else is out there in SIDC.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I think we have to address somewhere, that the data is not addressed because it is addressed elsewhere, and here's how we go get it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important to build this pathway.
Exactly. Okay, I think if we're March 2nd, we got to get our asses together pretty darn quick.
All right.
If we're not doing March, it's fine.
So
I'm thinking that doing March 2nd is good. I'll tell you why. You always spend 3 weeks on these damn things anyway.
Right.
So whether you do it a year later or now.
Did we set up time to start talking about it? Because I can't think right now about...
No, I can't think right now.
To be done.
Anyway, I'm already behind, but
right.
I think sometime next week would be a good time to have a quick call and just kind of...
Right.
So I have a question. In our group, people brought up that we need a broader group of quote PIs.
Yeah.
And
it came up in the summary. Somebody said it again.
Right. So that's a double-edged sword. I mean, one is are they actually going to do anything, and are they just going to take resources? On the other hand, maybe that's just the nature of the proposal. So I don't mind personally if there's a broader group of PIs. I think we'll have a better chance of being funded.
So let me make this following comment. if you interpret the PI in the technically correct sense, I don't think we need any more. If you,
Right.
if you think about people that need to be engaged and feel that they have a certain skin in this game, absolutely.
Yeah.
How does one do that? Some kind of arrangement where they're compensated for their time and effort.
Yeah.
That you have to come up with some good way of engaging them. Okay, so and so shall run so and will be compensated for 1 week of his time.
Right.
That-
I mean, we started already with adding Larry and Kyle, but we definitely need more. And they're not paid.
They're unpaid, so they're nice but not serious. I think you might want a couple other people. I don't know who are the right ones.
So,
I think they're committed. They're just not paid because they're civil servants and they're paid by our tax money.
No, but they will probably salary in support for a partial postdoc or something like that, right?
so Joe Dufik wrote me and said, let me know if I can help with anything.
Yeah, he wrote it to me, so he's definitely interested.
So I think we ought to reach out to Dufik and tell him, you know, if you want to be involved, that's great. He's got a lot of insight and he's a good writer. So
yeah,
he would be good. He would be very good.
Yeah, and that opens. I mean, that's Oregon is a huge facility already.
Yeah, maybe not a good one to engage also.
He is at Oregon.
No, Joe is at Oregon, but I'm talking about Mattia. Mattia is now Buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe a good one to also engage in some serious way. He essentially brings in a little double.
Right.
What was the total cost, Anat, of the proposal? Because I realized I don't even have the NSF
Oh, you got to pay.
proposal we spent, like the I don't
Now,
have
this work we have done now, the budget goes up, man. NSF couldn't get it. Is there a cap on that budget? I don't know what's there.
I don't know.
It wasn't that much last time. It was a little under $1 million, if I recall, 700-800 something.
Trying to find the full.
It wasn't a lot of money last time.
Where is it? It was probably about 2 million, I think.
Was it that much even?
No, it wasn't. You're thinking of the wrong proposal.
It was more than that. I don't recall those kind of numbers, but I would say that based on what we heard today, that's the right ballpark. Somewhere between 1.5 to 2 is the right ballpark.
Yeah.
All the things that are on our agenda,
Okay.
especially if we can figure out how to connect to the other big boys there, CSDMS and the climate people and so on.
Right. What about Mark Spiegelman? He indicated he would be happy to chat further with anybody. Does he have his own agenda, or is it good to try to incorporate him as a person?
I would have him run some kind of an advisory board, to be honest with you. Well, Mark's a great guy, but Mark's involved in about 251 things.
Right.
But
I will certify that.
yeah, he's super positive and very.
He knows how to, he's really energized that Solid Earth community. Really.
Yeah. And yeah, he's involved with CIG, and I know CIG is submitting now again for renewal, and he's involved with that.
So when they wrote CIG 1, Mark was kind of the engine, I think, even though the guy was the PI. And
Right.
50 plus people sign up saying that we shall take so-and-so role in this project.
Mm-hmm.
What about Tobias Fisher? He didn't say anything, but he would be a good person to involve. I mean,
would be good.
I mean, I don't know.
There's a lot of possibilities we'll have to prune down.
Yeah, I mean,
technically the Pangeo people had some good ideas.
Pangeo, yeah, they had some
technology. They were talking about some of those technologies made a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll just have to come up with some names and prune it down to 3 to 5 more that are serious. No more than that. I think we cannot manage. If you ask me.
Well, it would be easy to send the proposal that wasn't funded to those 2 or 3 people and say, hey, you know, would you be interested in participating in the next round? We're submitting it in the next month. And that'll be a strong filter. So
Right.
maybe, you know, but at least we will have done that outreach, and maybe somebody will have some good thoughts about it.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, you know,
We can maybe take the weekend, like, to think about who would be good people, and then maybe
Yeah.
meet on.
You'll get us together next week?
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought Matea and Joe would be a nice.
Great. Also a little deeper people.
Yeah.
Like, we're all kind of surfacey.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That'd be great, I think. Cool.
Well, that was good, guys. Thanks for organizing that, Annette. That was a pain in the butt.
Yes. But especially because I had another one on Monday. There was another workshop on Monday and Tuesday, and then I was teaching yesterday. So it was a fun week.
It's over now. Go get a beer or whatever.
Oh yeah. All right. Good to see you guys.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye.